Stem cells. Now, before we dive into stem cell research issues, let's start with the basics. First, what are stem cells? Well, stem cells are unspecialized cells that can give rise to very unique and complex cells. A cluster of stem cells is often called a blastocyst. Okay? Now, there are two types of stem cells. First, you have embryonic stem cells and then adult stem cells. Now, embryonic stem cells are fertilized in vitro, which means that they were created for infertility purposes and then donated to stem cell research centers. Now, adult stem cells are found among differentiated cells in tissue. What this means is that you can have 1 million muscle cells in muscle tissue, and you might find 50 to 100 stem cells within that tissue. Now, the interesting thing is that scientists are unsure of their origin because at this point in their life they should be completely exhausted. Now, why are stem cells important? Well, embryonic stem cells have the ability to divide many times for long periods of time. This is called proliferation, and a stem cell can proliferate for many years. It is because of this self-renewal that stem cells are highly sought after, as opposed to the average brain, muscle, or bone cell, which can only proliferate once or twice before they are exhausted. Now, how do stem cells affect medical and biological research? Well, scientists believe that stem cells are the doorway to the cure for major diseases like Parkinson's disease, diabetes, heart disease, and certain types of cancers. Now, for this to happen, scientists must first understand how stem cells remain unspecialized, how they can self-renew for many years, and how they signal within themselves to transform into a specialized cell. Now, there is, however, a very high cost for the sake of this necessary research. Now, the facts. First, let's talk about the advantages of embryonic stem cells. Availability. Embryonic stem cells are fertilized in vitro, as I said before, which means they are created for infertility purposes and then donated to stem cell research centers. This means that there are just thousands and thousands of embryos being donated by thousands and thousands of anonymous donors. Now, flexibility. Embryonic stem cells have the potential to form into any cell. Any cell. Big deal. Longevity. Embryonic stem cells potentially provide an endless amount of unspecialized cells. After 6 months, 30 stem cells would create over 10 million new stem cells before differentiating into specialized cells. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages of embryonic stem cells. They're difficult to differentiate into target tissue. What this means is that if you have embryonic stem cell that forms into a brain cell, it's very difficult to put that new brain cell into existing brain tissue. Okay, and because of this, the new brain cell is likely to be rejected when it's transplanted. And then also, they're capable of forming tumors and they promote tumor growth. And once the stem cells have been harvested, the embryo is discarded. This is destruction of human life. So, this gives us our problem, alright? And it asks the question, well, is it a human or is it just human tissue? Well, human life begins at fertilization. It does not matter whether or not the egg was fertilized outside of a woman's body. The embryos are human. So, ultimately, what is the difference between embryonic stem cell research and abortion? Abortion, it ends the life of a legitimately fertilized egg, while embryonic stem cell research ends the life of a legitimately fertilized egg. You tell me what's the difference. Now, this problem asks the question, is there a solution? I believe that the answer is yes. Now, the facts. First, let's start with the advantages of adult stem cells. Okay? Inducement to form specialized cells is easier. This means that it's a lot easier to take an adult stem cell and have it turn into a brain cell than it is to have an embryonic stem cell turn into a brain cell. Adult stem cells found in certain areas of the body, such as the umbilical cord, are just as flexible as embryonic stem cells. Now, rejection of the cells is greatly reduced. They're easy to harvest. They tend not to form tumors, and that does not harm the donor. There's no destruction of human life. Now, let's look at some of the disadvantages of adult stem cells. First, there's limited quantities of them. Okay? They tend not to live as long as embryonic stem cells, and most adult stem cells are not as flexible as embryonic stem cells. Now let's look at how adult stem cells are the solution to our problem, how they are the best ethical solution. First, adult stem cells do not cause destruction of human life. This removes human interference with the sovereignty of God, and it promotes good science to help find cures for major diseases, like the ones we talked about earlier. Well, now that you are informed about some of these stem cell research issues, how are you going to act on them?